The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Pendleton as Private Sarah Martinez laced up her combat boots for what would become the most significant day of her military career. At 22 years old, she had joined the Marines with dreams of serving her country and proving that women could excel in combat roles. Her determination had carried her through boot camp, and now she was deep into advanced infantry training. Sergeant Derek Thompson had been watching Martinez for weeks. A 15-year veteran with 3 combat deployments under his belt, Thompson had developed a reputation among recruits as someone who pushed boundaries. His methods were aggressive, sometimes crossing lines that other instructors wouldn't dare approach. Some called it old-school training. Others whispered about his anger issues that seemed to surface whenever female recruits excelled. The training exercise that morning was designed to test combat readiness under stress. Recruits were required to navigate an obstacle course while carrying full gear, then engage targets in a simulated firefight scenario. Martinez had been performing exceptionally well throughout the program, often outpacing her male counterparts and earning recognition from other instructors. As Martinez approached the final obstacle, Thompson positioned himself near the finish line. She had completed the course in record time, her breathing steady despite the grueling physical demands. Other recruits watched as she prepared for the final simulation, many aware of the tension that had been building between Thompson and the high-performing female recruits. The incident happened in seconds, but its impact would last forever. As Martinez completed her final target engagement and lowered her weapon, Thompson approached her aggressively. Without warning or provocation, he struck her across the face with enough force to send her stumbling backward. The sound echoed across the training ground, causing other recruits to freeze in shock. Martinez hit the ground hard, her helmet clattering against the concrete. Blood trickled from her nose as she struggled to understand what had just happened. Thompson stood over her, his face twisted with anger, shouting about discipline and respect. His words were laced with profanity and suggestions that women didn't belong in combat roles. The silence that followed was deafening. Fellow recruits stood frozen, uncertain whether to help Martinez or pretend they hadn't witnessed what clearly constituted assault. Some pulled out their phones, capturing video evidence of the aftermath. Others looked around desperately for another instructor to intervene. Thompson seemed to realize the gravity of his actions as he noticed the cameras and the horrified expressions of the recruits. He began backtracking, claiming that Martinez had been insubordinate and that his actions were justified under military discipline protocols, but his voice lacked conviction, and everyone present knew they had witnessed something that went far beyond acceptable training methods. Martinez slowly got to her feet, refusing offers of help from nearby recruits. Her training had taught her to show strength even in the face of adversity. But the humiliation and physical pain were overwhelming. She maintained her composure, knowing that any emotional reaction would likely be used against her later. Within minutes, word of the incident began spreading throughout the base. Other instructors arrived at the scene, and Martinez was immediately taken for medical evaluation. Thompson was ordered to report to his superior officer, his face pale as he realized that his career might be over. The base medical facility confirmed that Martinez had suffered a concussion along with facial bruising and a possible broken nose. The attending physician documented her injuries carefully, noting that the trauma was consistent with being struck by a closed fist. This medical report would become crucial evidence in the investigation that was about to unfold. As news of the incident reached higher command levels, Base Commander Colonel James Mitchell was in his office reviewing routine administrative matters. Mitchell had built his career on maintaining the highest standards of conduct and professionalism in the Marines. A decorated officer with 25 years of service, he had zero tolerance for abuse of power or discrimination within his command. The phone call that changed everything came from the duty officer, who reported the incident with barely concealed urgency. Mitchell listened in growing anger as details emerged about Thompson's assault on Martinez. He immediately ordered a full investigation and instructed that all witnesses be interviewed separately to prevent any coordination of stories. Mitchell's response was swift and decisive. Within an hour of receiving the report, he had assembled a team of investigators and begun the process that would ultimately end Thompson's military career. He understood that this incident represented everything wrong with outdated attitudes in the military and was determined to send a clear message about acceptable conduct. The investigation revealed that this wasn't Thompson's first inappropriate action toward female recruits. Several other women came forward with stories of verbal abuse, inappropriate comments, and intimidation tactics that had gone unreported due to fear of retaliation. The pattern painted a picture of systemic harassment that had been allowed to continue for too long. As evening fell on that fateful day, Martinez sat in her barracks reflecting on the events that had unfolded. She knew that filing a formal complaint would likely subject her to scrutiny and potential backlash from some quarters, but she also understood that staying silent would allow Thompson's behavior to continue, potentially harming future female recruits. The decision to move forward with formal charges wasn't easy, but Martinez found strength in the support of her fellow recruits and the knowledge that she was fighting for something bigger than herself. She was fighting for the right of all women to serve their country without fear of harassment or assault from those in positions of authority. Thompson spent that same evening consulting with military lawyers, desperate to find a way to minimize the consequences of his actions. He had hoped that his years of service and combat experience would provide some protection, but the evidence against him was overwhelming and the witnesses were credible. The ripple effects of the incident were already being felt throughout the base. Other female Marines began speaking out about their own experiences, creating a momentum for change that would be impossible to ignore. The culture of silence that had protected abusive instructors for years was finally beginning to crack. Colonel Mitchell worked late into the night, reviewing policies and procedures while coordinating with higher command levels about the appropriate response. He knew that this case would likely attract media attention and wanted to ensure that justice was served quickly and transparently. The base was buzzing with conversation about the incident, with most personnel expressing shock at Thompson's actions and support for Martinez. The consensus was clear. There was no place in the modern military for instructors who would assault recruits, regardless of their gender or performance level. As the first day ended, it was already clear that this incident would have far-reaching consequences that extended well beyond the individuals directly involved. The Marine Corps was about to face a reckoning with outdated attitudes and practices that had been allowed to persist for too long. The second day brought a flurry of activity as Colonel Mitchell's investigation team began interviewing witnesses and gathering evidence. The base buzzed with tension as word spread about the formal inquiry into Sergeant Thompson's conduct. Marines who had witnessed the incident found themselves summoned to give official statements, each recounting the shocking assault they had seen. Detective Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the lead investigator, had handled numerous cases of misconduct during her 10-year career in military law enforcement. However, the clarity of this case surprised her. Rarely had she encountered such overwhelming evidence and witness testimony that painted such a clear picture of unprovoked assault. The video footage captured by recruits proved to be devastating evidence against Thompson. Multiple angles showed him striking Martinez without any provocation, followed by his aggressive verbal tirade. The recordings captured not only the physical assault, but also his derogatory comments about women in combat roles, providing clear evidence of gender-based discrimination. Martinez underwent additional medical examinations as her injuries were more severe than initially diagnosed. The neurologist confirmed a moderate concussion that would require several weeks of recovery. Her broken nose would need surgical correction, and the psychological trauma was evident despite her attempts to maintain military bearing. During her formal interview with investigators, Martinez displayed the same composure that had impressed her instructors throughout training. She recounted the events with precision, providing details that corroborated the witness statements and video evidence. Her professionalism during the interview process impressed the investigation team and strengthened her credibility. Thompson's interview painted a very different picture, accompanied by his military defense attorney. He attempted to justify his actions by claiming that Martinez had been insubordinate and that physical correction was sometimes necessary in military training. His explanations grew increasingly desperate as investigators presented him with video evidence and witness statements that contradicted his version of events. The investigation revealed a troubling pattern of behavior that extended far beyond the incident with Martinez. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Cole came forward with detailed accounts of Thompson's inappropriate conduct toward her during previous training cycles. She described verbal abuse, threats to her career advancement, and unwanted physical contact that she had endured in silence. Corporal Amanda Foster provided testimony about Thompson's consistent pattern of targeting high-performing female recruits. She explained how he seemed to take personal offense when women excelled in traditionally male-dominated areas of training. His behavior had created a hostile environment that affected the performance and confidence of female Marines throughout the program. The investigation team discovered that complaints about Thompson had been filed informally through various channels over the past 2 years. However, these complaints had been handled at lower levels and never reached Colonel Mitchell's attention. This revelation highlighted systemic failures in the reporting and response mechanisms that had allowed Thompson's behavior to continue unchecked. Private First Class David Chen, one of the male recruits who witnessed the assault, provided crucial testimony about the impact on unit morale. He described how Thompson's actions had created division among the recruits, with some expressing fear about reporting misconduct, and others questioning the Marine Corps' commitment to equal treatment. Colonel Mitchell reviewed the mounting evidence with growing anger and determination. Each new revelation reinforced his conviction that Thompson's actions represented a fundamental violation of Marine Corps values and required the strongest possible response. He began coordinating with higher command levels to ensure that appropriate charges were filed. The base commander's reputation for swift and decisive action preceded him as word spread about his handling of the investigation. Marines throughout the installation watched to see whether the Corps would truly hold one of its own accountable for assault and discrimination. The outcome would send a message about the organization's commitment to protecting all Marines. Thompson's fellow instructors found themselves under scrutiny as investigators examined whether they had witnessed previous incidents or failed to report concerning behavior. Several admitted to observing inappropriate conduct, but claimed they hadn't realized the severity of the situation or hadn't wanted to interfere with another instructor's methods. The psychological evaluation of Martinez revealed the full extent of the trauma she had experienced. Beyond the physical injuries, she was dealing with feelings of betrayal, anxiety about her future in the Marines, and concerns about potential retaliation. The military psychologist recommended counseling and emphasized the importance of institutional support for her recovery. Martinez's family learned about the incident through news reports that began appearing as the story gained media attention. Her parents, who had been proud supporters of her military service, expressed outrage at Thompson's actions and called for accountability. Their public statements added external pressure for a thorough investigation and appropriate consequences. The legal team representing Thompson attempted to negotiate a plea agreement that would allow him to retire with reduced charges. However, Colonel Mitchell and the prosecution team rejected these overtures, insisting that the severity of the assault and the pattern of discrimination warranted court-martial proceedings. Additional witnesses came forward as news of the investigation spread throughout the Marine Corps community. Female Marines from other installations shared similar experiences with Thompson during his previous assignments, painting a picture of serial misconduct that had gone unaddressed for years. The Marine Corps headquarters became involved as the case attracted attention from Congress and women's advocacy groups. Senior leadership recognized that the handling of this case would be closely watched and could impact ongoing efforts to integrate women into combat roles and improve military culture. Thompson's military personnel file underwent detailed review, revealing performance evaluations that had overlooked or minimized concerning behavior patterns. Some supervisors had noted his aggressive training style, but had framed it as dedication rather than recognizing it as potential misconduct. Martinez continued her recovery while dealing with the stress of the ongoing investigation. Fellow recruits rallied around her, providing support and expressing their determination to continue serving despite witnessing such disturbing conduct from a senior Marine. Their solidarity strengthened the case against Thompson and demonstrated the positive aspects of military culture. The investigation team compiled a comprehensive report detailing not only Thompson's assault on Martinez, but also the systemic failures that had allowed his behavior to continue. The report included recommendations for policy changes, improved training for instructors, and better reporting mechanisms for misconduct. Colonel Mitchell prepared for what would become the most significant decision of his command tenure. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were credible, and the impact on unit cohesion was undeniable. Thompson's military career was effectively over, but the manner of his departure would send a message about the Marine Corps' values and commitment to change. As the investigation neared completion, Martinez faced a critical decision about her own future. Despite the trauma she had experienced, she remained committed to serving her country and proving that one individual's misconduct wouldn't derail her military aspirations. Her resilience inspired other female Marines and demonstrated the strength that Thompson had tried to undermine. The stage was set for a confrontation that would define careers, change policies, and potentially transform military culture. Colonel Mitchell's next actions would determine whether justice would be served and whether the Marine Corps would truly hold itself accountable for protecting all Marines from abuse and discrimination. Colonel Mitchell called Sergeant Thompson into his office 3 days after the investigation concluded. The atmosphere was tense as Thompson entered, still clinging to hope that his years of service might earn him leniency. However, the base commander's expression made it clear that no mercy would be shown for his inexcusable actions. The meeting lasted less than 15 minutes, but it effectively ended Thompson's military career. Colonel Mitchell presented the overwhelming evidence methodically, leaving no room for denial or justification. Video footage, witness statements, medical reports, and testimony from multiple female Marines painted an undeniable picture of assault and systematic harassment. Thompson's attempt to invoke his combat record and years of service fell on deaf ears. Mitchell explained that Thompson's behavior represented everything wrong with outdated military culture and that his actions had undermined unit cohesion, violated Marine Corps values, and potentially damaged the institution's reputation. The charges against Thompson were severe and comprehensive. In addition to assault charges related to striking Martinez, he faced counts of conduct unbecoming an officer, harassment, discrimination, and violation of good order and discipline. Each charge carried significant potential penalties, including imprisonment and dishonorable discharge. Mitchell's decision to pursue court-martial proceedings rather than administrative punishment sent a clear message throughout the Marine Corps. This wasn't merely about one incident, but about establishing that assault and discrimination would not be tolerated regardless of an individual's rank or service record. The court-martial proceedings attracted significant media attention and scrutiny from military justice advocates. Martinez testified with remarkable composure, describing not only the physical assault, but also the psychological impact of being attacked by someone in a position of authority. Her testimony was powerful and credible, leaving little doubt about Thompson's guilt. Multiple witnesses corroborated Martinez's account, and the video evidence provided undeniable proof of the assault. Thompson's defense attorney struggled to present any credible justification for his client's actions, ultimately focusing on requesting leniency based on his previous service record. The prosecution, led by Major Sarah Kim, presented a compelling case that went beyond the specific assault charges. She demonstrated how Thompson's pattern of behavior had created a hostile environment for female Marines and violated their rights to serve without harassment or discrimination. Expert testimony from military psychologists explained the long-term impact of Thompson's actions on both Martinez and the broader military community. They emphasized how such incidents undermined efforts to create an inclusive military culture and damaged trust in the chain of command. Thompson's conviction was swift and unanimous. The court-martial panel found him guilty on all charges, rejecting his claims of justified discipline or training methodology. The evidence was simply too overwhelming and his actions too clearly inappropriate to warrant any other verdict. The sentencing phase revealed the full extent of Thompson's misconduct. Additional witnesses came forward to testify about similar incidents involving other female Marines, painting a picture of serial abuse that had gone unchecked for years. The pattern demonstrated that this wasn't an isolated incident, but rather representative of Thompson's character. Colonel Mitchell attended the sentencing hearing to observe the conclusion of a case that had defined his tenure as base commander. He watched with satisfaction as the panel imposed a sentence that included imprisonment, reduction in rank to private, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and dishonorable discharge from the Marine Corps. The sentence sent shockwaves through the military community, particularly among those who had believed that Thompson's years of service would protect him from serious consequences. The message was clear. Assault and harassment would be prosecuted to the fullest extent, regardless of rank or previous service record. Martinez's recovery continued as she watched Thompson face justice for his actions. The conviction validated her decision to come forward and provided closure that allowed her to focus on her future military career. Her courage in testifying had helped protect other female Marines from similar treatment. The impact of the case extended far beyond the immediate participants. The Marine Corps implemented new training programs for drill instructors, revised policies on reporting misconduct, and established better support systems for victims of harassment and assault. Thompson's conviction became a catalyst for positive change throughout the organization. Colonel Mitchell used the case as an opportunity to address the entire base about Marine Corps values and expectations for conduct. His speech emphasized that respect for all Marines was non-negotiable, and that leadership came with the responsibility to protect rather than abuse those under their command. Thompson's military career ended in disgrace as he was processed out of the Marine Corps. His dishonorable discharge meant the loss of all veterans' benefits and would follow him for the rest of his civilian life. The man who had once taken pride in his Marine status became an example of what not to be. Martinez returned to training with renewed determination and the support of her fellow Marines. Her experience, while traumatic, had demonstrated her resilience and commitment to serving her country. She became an advocate for other female Marines and worked to prevent similar incidents from occurring. The case attracted attention from congressional committees examining military culture and the treatment of women in the armed forces. Thompson's conviction was cited as evidence that the military justice system could work effectively when commanders were committed to holding personnel accountable for misconduct. Colonel Mitchell's handling of the case enhanced his reputation as a leader who prioritized justice and equality. His decisive actions demonstrated that effective command included the willingness to confront difficult situations and make hard decisions when necessary. His career continued to advance based partly on his demonstrated commitment to Marine Corps values. The training program underwent significant reforms as a result of the incident. New oversight mechanisms were implemented to monitor instructor conduct, and clear guidelines were established for appropriate training methods. The changes helped ensure that future incidents like Thompson's assault would be prevented or quickly addressed. Thompson's conviction became a case study in military academies and leadership training programs. His fall from respected sergeant to convicted felon served as a powerful example of how quickly a career could be destroyed by poor choices and inappropriate conduct. Martinez's story inspired other military women to speak out about harassment and discrimination. Her courage in confronting Thompson and testifying at his court-martial demonstrated that victims could seek justice and that the system would support them when they came forward. The broader military community learned valuable lessons from the case about the importance of creating inclusive environments and holding all personnel to high standards of conduct. Thompson's conviction marked a turning point in how the Marine Corps addressed issues of harassment and assault. Years later, Martinez would reflect on the incident as a defining moment that tested her resolve and ultimately strengthened her commitment to military service. Thompson's actions had been intended to break her spirit, but instead they had revealed her strength and helped drive positive change throughout the Marine Corps. Colonel Mitchell's decision to pursue the strongest possible charges against Thompson had ended one Marine's career while potentially saving many others from similar treatment. His leadership during the crisis demonstrated the difference that decisive action could make in protecting military personnel and upholding institutional values. The case of Sergeant Thompson became a reminder that no one in the military is above accountability and that assaulting fellow service members would result in swift and severe consequences. His conviction closed one dark chapter while opening new possibilities for a more inclusive and respectful military culture.